أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بفضل الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه أجمعين محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. Just a few pointers from what happened last night before we proceed on the next part of the lecture. When it comes to qadhaf and how people freely accuse others, and it is a great problem in our community especially, that people can automatically stain the reputation of someone with a single word. Any small matter and they will stain someone's reputation without evidence, even though, I already mentioned, if you have yaqeen, if you have certainty that someone has committed adultery, certainty, even with this certainty you cannot make the accusation. You will be told to bring your witnesses, and if the witnesses are less than 4, then you and all the other witnesses will be lashed 80 times each. Why? Because Allah Azza wa Jal does not want these issues to become trivial. These issues become something that becomes so mundane that people walk around and find it as if it is a normal thing. That they start to boast about their prowess when it comes to conquering women and what have you. And women about how they feel liberated in this manner. And they are not. In fact, it degrades them and it puts them down. So Allah Azza wa Jal has put the line there. Even when Allah Azza wa Jal mentions about Banu Israel and the things that they have done, He says in the Quran, بَلْ طَبَعَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهَا بِكُفْرِهِمْ فَلَا يُؤْمِنُونَ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. That Allah Azza wa Jal has put a seal upon Banu Israel because of their disbelief, and only a few believe. And then He says, وَبِكُفْرِهِمْ وَقَوْلِهِمْ عَلَى مَرْيَمْ بُهْتَانًا عَظِيمًا. Of the things that Allah recalls about what Banu Israel did wrong, He says the accusation of Maryam. Maryam alayha salam was accused of this. How did they accuse Maryam? You imagine the situation. Maryam comes forward with a child without a father. You look at the world today and you look at some of the countries in the world, a woman gives birth. If she doesn't produce the father, they stone her. In some countries she's stoned. Stoned to death. Why? Even though the laws are clear on what would bring upon stoning. You need 4 witnesses that witness the act. There's no mention of the fact if a woman has a child that you can accuse her of adultery. She doesn't have to announce to you as the reason. You know, like when we have in marriage in Islam, it's not like if you look at the different sects, if you look at Ahlul Amma, the general Muslims and the Sunni Muslims in general, when it comes to marriage, they have 2 witnesses. When they want marriage, they need 2 witnesses. We don't. Our marriages don't need witnesses. We only have witnesses for divorce. So someone could be married and you don't know, and it's not your business to know. They don't have to announce it to you. It's not your business. So Allah Azza wa Jal here, in the case of Maryam, even though there was no father involved, that she would give birth to Isa ala nabiyina wa alihi wa alayhi salam, in this miraculous birth, Banu Israel, the children of Israel, would accuse her of this accusation. And God condemns them for this. This is one of the things that God adds up when He mentions what? He mentions them worshipping the calf. He mentions them, He mentions the outrageous calls to see Allah Azza wa Jal. He mentions their refusal to say hatta when they enter the door. All these things that have been brought against them, but the main thing that He talks about right at the end is this. Of the main things that He has is the fact that they accuse Maryam alayhi salam. This also includes accusing men of homosexuality. To accuse someone, and this is common. People accuse, they come out so quickly and they make such accusations in the same way. That this person is so-and-so. And you can't come out with these accusations in the same form as you do towards women. So this is when it comes to qadhaf. One more thing is a story where Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam, the narration says he is walking with a friend of his. It says Sadiqan. The actual hadith says كان لأبي عبد الله عليه السلام صديق. So it says he's his friend. He says, and they would walk together and they would be together all the time. This is the narration says. One day they're walking and this friend has a servant with him. He looks back to see the servant isn't there. He calls him once, he calls him twice, he calls him 3 times, he doesn't see him. And then suddenly he appears. When he appears, on the 4th call, he says to him, Yabnal fa'ila, aina kunt. These are the words he uses. In other words, he calls his mum a lewd name. He calls his mum one of the words we mentioned that we don't want to use up here. That kind of name. So the Imam then says to him, the narration says, فَرَفَعَ أَبُو عَبْدِ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ يَدَهُ. He says he raises his hand and it says, and he slaps his forehead, his own forehead. The Imam, like when you're in shock of what you've heard. Then he says, Subhanallah, taqdhuf ummah. You accuse his mother. Sometimes when you mention to someone, if someone says to someone, you son of a so-and-so. He says, you accuse his mother? The Imam goes on to say, he says, قَدْ كُنْتَ أَرَىٰ أَنَّ لَكَ وَرَىٰ. That I thought you were someone that had wara. What's wara? Someone that abstains from sin. You are a man that is God-fearing. This is what I thought of you. And the man says, جُعِلْتُ فِدَاكَ. That his mum is from some tribe, and in this tribe, they have a different way of marriage. And his mum is a mushrik. Listen to the words. He says his mum is a polytheist. His mum's not a Muslim. And then the Imam says, أَمَا عَلِمْتَ أَنَّ لِكُلِّ أُمَّةٍ نِكَاحًا. That do you not know that every nation and every race has marriage? This man is a Christian, this man is a Jew, this man is a polytheist, a Buddhist, a Hindu. They have marriage just like you and I. You're not supposed to look at them. Remember in the net and the lectures, if people have been listening to Samahta Sayyid, he mentions that tradition that's famous for Amir al-Mu'mineen. We once printed them on the back of the shirts, that humans are of 2 types, a brother in faith or an equal in humanity. This is a human being. And then after the Imam mentions this, it says that the person narrating, he says, I never saw the Imam walk with this man again. That the Imam kept away from such a person that can make such a daft accusation. Taban, this is with regard to these people. But regard to someone was to say this about Saddam, there's no issue in that, just to clarify that. If you were to say that about someone like that, there's no issue, because it's obvious And he bears the qualities of someone like that. Just to keep you in mind. So don't think, oh my God, I better not say this about, a murderer or someone that fulfills this category differs. Not because of someone that doesn't have this. Someone that is like Ted Bundy, a serial killer, that's born out of wedlock. This falls upon him. The son of Sam, a serial killer, born out of wedlock. This falls upon him. Saddam, born out of wedlock, falls upon him. And others, we don't want to name all the celebrities tonight. Anyway, the next thing we must look at with the tongue is when we speak the truth. Because this is what it's all about. Mantiquhum as-sawab is that when they speak to the point, they speak what is right, they speak the truth. This is one of the worst traits to have, is someone that does not speak the truth. إِذَا صُمْتُمْ فَاحْفَظُوا أَلْسِنَتَكُمْ عَنِ الْكَذِبِ. The Messenger of God says, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, that if you fast, he says, for you to protect your tongues from lying. Don't lie. Abstain from lying. Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen, when Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, when he exhorts his sons, he mentions to them and say the truth. In his exhortations, in his wasiyah, he says, speak the truth. If you look at his exhortations to his companions, Ya Qumayl, qul al-haq fi kulli hal. Say the truth in all situations. Taban, there are situations that are exempt, and they are only 3 situations. Don't sit there and make it. One person said to me, oh, you can lie to an unbeliever. I said, where did you get this from? Where did you get that I can lie to an unbeliever? You can't lie. You can only lie in 3 situations, and we'll go over these. Firstly, in order for us to speak to the truth, we must understand the benefits of the truth to begin with. What is the benefit of me speaking the truth? Firstly, if you speak the truth, you don't need to have a good memory. That's one of the best benefits, because you're always saying the truth. If you lie, you need to remember. You need to remember every detail of every lie. That fish I told them in court, was it 100 kilos or 120 kilos? You know, those 3 islanders I beat up, were they 3 or 4? What day was it? You need to remember every specific detail of your lies. You can't hide a single thing, because some people wait. In fact, I was at, and something you need to know is a lie. You are someone people don't like to be around. People go, oh, here he comes. You need to know that when you sit with them, that people are sitting there and they're waiting for it. You know, I used to remember when we were younger, we'd be sitting and they have those Nokia phones and they have that rocket ringtone. And then when someone would sit there and start telling, you know, porky pies, they'd start to press the ringing tones. You hear it makes that rocket taking off sound. And honestly, if I was sitting there and someone was doing that to me, I would die. It is so humiliating that the people around you think you're a storyteller. It's so degrading that people think of you so little. How can I accept to live like this? How can you be like this? I remember I was invited once to a place to give a talk. Before the talk, we're sitting down, and there was a guy, he came and sat down, and anything you'd speak about, he knows everything about it. And the details he would give were so wrong. They're so far from the truth. You know, if you mention an alligator, he'd wrestle an alligator. And he would say, did you know this and that? And then after he got up, you know, at first I said, you know, let's assume it was a little alligator. Let's assume he's saying the truth. Then one of the boys sat down and said, oh, is my uncle here? To another boy. And he said, yes. He goes, as he started telling stories. This is what he thinks of his own uncle. Imagine that your nephew thought of you as that, nothing more than a storyteller. It's so degrading. It's so humiliating. So firstly is that. Secondly, firstly we said you need a good memory. Secondly, you become socially unpopular. People don't like to be, oh, is he going to be there? Yeah, I won't come. Thirdly, God and his angels belie you. In the narration says, Inna awwala man yukadhibu al-kadhab Allahu Azza wa Jal. Thumma al-malakan alladhan ma'ahu. Firstly, God is the first one that belies him, says this guy's a liar. Secondly, the two angels. And finally, this is the worst part. Huwa ya'lam annahu kadhab. The worst part is he knows he's lying. You feel dirty when you're doing something wrong. Saying a lie, he feels dirty. He feels what he is doing is wrong. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, speak the truth even if it be against you. Speak the truth even if it is bitter. Now listen, there's a difference between speaking the truth and being shameless. Remember this. I said this one of the nights. Someone asks you, have you consumed alcohol? Even, God forbid, if you have, don't say yes. This is being shameless. It's different to saying the truth. He's not a confessional box, this person. It isn't his business. Any question someone asks you right now, I want to ask you, someone asks you a real personal question right now. Someone comes up to you and says, how much are you worth with all your assets and what's your net worth? How many people would answer this question? Good examples, if you ask a Westerner who he votes for, it's a personal question. He says, what's it to you? Even though there's only two parties, really, that they vote between, he doesn't want to tell you. With us, this is the way we should be. When someone asks you a question that is like this, don't be shameless. Don't give out everything that needs to be said. Say the truth means when you speak what is necessary in that situation. If someone asks you a question that's none of their business, you say it's none of your business. But don't lie. Don't be someone that is considered a liar. A tradition عن الرسول صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم hadith says واجتنبوا الكذب وإن رأيتم فيه النجاة فإن فيه الهلكة. You know, he says avoid lying even if you see that it is what will save you. You know, sometimes you're in a situation you go, I'm going to lie. If I lie, I'll get out of this. He says, even if you see that you'll be saved, you won't be saved. In fact, he says, and there's a ta'kid on this, he emphasizes this, that it is what brings about your destruction. You've heard وَفِي الصِّدْقِ النَّجَاةِ, that you get saved when you say the truth. How often have you said the truth and you come out clean? That you're saved. I remember one guy, they arrested him for an armed robbery. And the police took him in, and with their manipulative skills, they took him inside and they said, look, if you confess to every armed robbery that you've committed, we'll just get you for the first one that you did. And we'll clear your record. This guy believed them. He was so naive, he confessed to 7 armed robberies. And he gave them in detail. Now everyone said to him, I'm not saying for people to go, there's no need, he didn't need to say this. But he said, all right, I'll just come clean. You know? When he went into court, the judge said to him, either you are really remorseful or you are a complete and utter idiot. Because you've just confessed to everything. He says, but I'm going to assume that you are remorseful. And he sentenced him to 2.5 years. 2.5 years jail for 7 armed robberies. It's unheard of. He sentenced him to this amount. See, sometimes you think, I'm not saying for you to go confess, but I'm saying, see, he said the truth there, and it got him out of a situation. Taban, when you're dealing with an unjust system, you've got to be careful. Remember the law, just to keep in mind, this is a sidetrack, that the police are just there to get information to use against you, not with you. Anything you say will be used against you. They never say it will be used for you. So you need to remember that. That's another side thing to keep. in your mind. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The other thing to keep in mind on why I shouldn't lie. Remember, I'm saying these things. Don't say, oh my God, I'm a liar, I'm going to hell. No, this is the month for you to change. You can actually change. If you have a bad quality, you can lose this quality. When the Imam is asked this question, he's asked, Al-Mu'min yazni, does the believer commit adultery? The Imam replies, قَدْ يَكُونُ ذَلِكَ. There may be some believers that have committed adultery. And then he says, قَالَ الْمُؤْمِنْ يَسْرُقْ. Does a believer steal? He says, قَدْ يَكُونُ ذَلِكَ. Some believers may have stolen. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So then, sorry, this question is towards the Prophet, not the Imam. Then he says, قَالَ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ الْمُؤْمِنْ يَكْذِبْ. So first he asked, does the believer commit adultery? Does the believer steal? And twice the Prophet says, yes, maybe. But then, when he asked, does the believer lie? The Messenger of God sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, La. He says, قَالَ لَا وَاللَّهِ تَعَالَى. That Allah Azza wa Jal, He swears by God that the believer doesn't lie. The believer doesn't lie. This is a quality that must be removed. Now, another thing I need to remember is Allah abhors lying. And one thing I remember when you are listening on the 10th of Muharram, on the day of Ashura, and they mention the sermons. These are very important. The only problem is on the 10th everyone's sitting and crying. No one actually listens to the words that are being said. They're all in a state of sorrow or all in a state of mourning. If you actually sat and read the script, read what is taking place, what the Imam, the sermons of the Imam, what the Imam salawatullahi wa alayhi says on the 10th of Muharram. One of the traditions that he says, one of the narrations says, he says, Wallah ma ta'ammadtu al-kidhb. منذ علمت أن الله يمقت عليه أهله. That Imam Hussein says, that I never took upon, basically I never took a life where I would lie. Why? He says, from when I knew that God abhors, God hates those that lie. He hates the people, those that tell a lie. And then he explains what he is about to say. In other words, I'm not a liar. Not only am I not a liar, sometimes we don't commit a sin. But then there are those that don't like to commit a sin. Sometimes this is when you reach that next level in faith. When you don't like to even commit a sin. Some people don't drink because it's haram. But if someone comes out of the blue and tells them it's halal and changes, they'll get a drink. Taban, drink alcohol. But others, they don't even like to commit the sin. They dislike the sin because God dislikes the sin. They have this feeling towards the sinning. Now, just the 3 points I'll bring up and I'll wrap up our discussion. There are certain occasions or situations where I may lie. The first situation where I may lie is where I wish to fix a situation. Now, what does this mean? If I see two people, they have fought. Two people are arguing. Two believers have argued with each other. You got these people that will pass one set of words to the other and thus ignite the fight. This is something that is abhorred by God. This is something disliked and hated by God. This is something that God will cast you away for. And then there are those that lie to bring people together. This is the first situation where you can lie. For example, I say about one of my brothers that this person is a deplorable person. I will set him alight if I see him. And then the information gets to him and he says, he said these things about me. And you come to fix the situation and you say, no, he didn't. Well, this is all untrue. In fact, he likes you. In fact, he's about to come over and meet you and make up. Try and repair the problem, especially between a married couple. When the situation is ignited, you try and put out the fire. Don't be one of those people that passes information from one to the other. In the second situation is in the case of protection. I want to save someone from persecution or death. There I may lie. Save myself from persecution or death. One of the examples of this is when we practice taqi. When you practice taqi, it's a form of you protecting yourself, as is mentioned in the Quran. That وَجَاءَ, I think, وَقَالَ رَجُلٌ مِنْ آلِ فِرْعَوْنَ يَكْتِمُ إِيمَانَهُ. Allah Azza wa Jal mentions that there is a believer from the family of Fir'aun. A believer. God mentions him as a believer, and he says he is one that conceals his faith. Why did he conceal his faith? So he doesn't get killed. This is lying, isn't it? Because you're concealing. This is what they call you. When they call you Rafidi, they say Rafidi and you're taqi where you lie. You're actually concealing. But this is you're concealing because you don't want your head to be cut off. It's different. But I'm talking about if you're out in the regions where you will experience severe persecution or death, you're permitted to conceal the truth. And the third situation is with in relation to war. When you use war trickery, you're allowed to lie. You know, you can't tell your enemy, well, this is where we're going to fire our rockets from, you know, and the soldiers will be hiding in that situation. And you're at war. You know, you're not there to shake hands and skip across the borders with each other. You know, you're not there to exchange greetings. You're at war. You're there to fight. And that's it's like the West has got this thing they call the Geneva Convention. This guy broke Geneva, and they break it all the time. It doesn't even exist. In war, you're allowed. Taban, there are laws for everything. There are laws for war, but you're allowed to use trickery in war. There is permitted. Other than that, you must say the truth in every situation. No other situation can you tell a lie. I also would like you all to supplicate tonight for a sick child, if that's possible. And plus, because you've been fasting, and especially you people that are present here that have not been subdued by the state of origin and have decided to come, so you are special tonight. So I want you to, in your du'as, to mention that my brother's daughter, she's gone under surgery today and she's got heart issues. I want you to ask Allah Azza wa Jal to cure her. ببركة الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.